In this week's Parsha, we read about the forbidden types of animals, species of forbidden birds, and also it tells us about which fish can or cannot be eaten. And of course, the general rule is that the fish has to have fins and scales. And one would think that therefore it should be very easy to determine which fish is kosher. What could be easier than determining whether the specific fish has fins and scales? But it turns out even that is not so simple. And sometimes there is a dispute in Jewish law. And in particular, I want to mention one of the most expensive foods around. In America, it's not really that popular, but let's say in Russia and other parts of the world, it's a very expensive and popular type of food, a delicacy of sorts, and that is the black caviar. Now, with regards to red caviar, the typical red caviar comes from kosher fish without any question. Whether or not you could eat red caviar without hashgacha is a separate question. Are there any other ingredients that we may be afraid that when the caviar was preserved, could they possibly add something that's not kosher? That's a separate question, and I'm not going to go into this. It's certainly possible that in certain countries where there is no hashgacha on red caviar, and in general, many countries in the world don't enjoy the type of situation we have here in the USA, where most products that don't have meat usually have a hashgacha. There is OU or some kind of other hashgacha pretty much on every product, from mayonnaise to ketchup. In a lot of countries, they have to rely on the good old ways, and that is before hashgachas were invented, before the modern production of food, and that is based on what is known about the product. That's how it was in the times of Talmud. They used to buy certain foods from non-Jews if they knew that generally these foods are kosher, and they didn't worry about something that's extremely rare, that maybe the non-Jew added something. So depending on the types of food it is, in places like Russia or Ukraine today, Jews have to rely on other methods of finding out what's kosher and what's not. Otherwise, they would be able to eat only fruits and vegetables and a few other things, grains. So when there is no other choice, sometimes you don't need a hashgacha, and it's possible that red caviar, at least the normal way of preservation, usually just has red caviar. I don't know if there is possibilities of some kind of of some kind of forgery. So assuming that all it has is red caviar and some agent needed to preserve it, it might be that you don't even need hashgacha. But at least with regards to the caviar itself, there's no question that caviar that's red comes from the fish that's kosher. The question is about black caviar. Almost everybody you ask, if you ask a typical Orthodox Jew, are you allowed to eat black caviar? They'll tell you no. Black caviar comes from a fish that doesn't have scales rather. It has fins, obviously, but it doesn't have scales. The issue, however, is more complex than that. Some kind of scales, this fish from which black caviar comes, by the way, this is a very rare fish. It's mostly found in Caspian Sea. So this black caviar that comes from that fish, of course, the main question is whether the fish is kosher. If fish is kosher, the caviar is kosher. Just like the eggs, for instance. Why do we check in eggs? You don't have to have hashgacha on eggs. You could buy eggs from non-Jews, because all our eggs are chicken eggs, and eggs from other birds would look different. We certainly wouldn't all of a sudden discover that we were eating what we thought was chicken eggs and turned out to be not coming from chicken. So since chicken is kosher, the eggs are kosher. Same way, the caviar would be kosher if the fish is kosher. The question is whether the fish that produces black caviar is of kosher variety. So it turns out that it does have something that's similar to scales. The technical term might be scientifically not necessarily that it's scales, but the question is, does the Jewish law consider that covering that the fish has scales or not? So what it comes down to is, how do you define scales? Ramban, and the Rama brings it in the Shulchan Aruch, says that the scales should be able to be removed. That's what is the main definition of scales. If you could take them out from the skin of the fish easily, then it's considered scales. So there was a great rabbi about 300 years ago in Prague, what is today capital of Czechia. This was, of course, a very important Jewish city with a large Jewish population, and historically there was a very, very old community of Jews there, and it was very prestigious to be a rabbi of Prague. He was probably one of the greatest rabbis of his time, Rav Yecheskel Landau. And his most famous work is the Questions and Answers Nodah BeYehuda, known in Yehuda. So this Nodah BeYehuda, we usually call people by the book of which they wrote, is a response on all kinds of different topics, including this question. This question is discussed in the book. And Nodah BeYehuda thought that indeed the scales that this fish, which produces black caviar, has are considered kosher scales, since they could be removed after a certain procedure done to the fish. There's a way to make, through specific procedures, there is a way to make these scales removable. And other rabbis didn't agree with it. Even after the death of Nodah BeYehuda, his son was getting letters that his father changed his mind, and he used to say, no, if my father changed his mind, he would have told me, and he would have told everybody. How could he permit something and then change his mind, and you're the only person who knows about it, not me? So the point is that this was actually a big controversy, whether black caviar is kosher or not. And in particular today, the custom is definitely not to eat black caviar. I don't know of anybody who eats black caviar. Definitely OU and other hashgachot do not put the hashgacha on regular black caviar. I'm talking about the expensive regular black caviar. There are other types of caviar that look black that are from other fish. They're usually not particularly tasty, and they're definitely not a delicacy. And that type of caviar may have a hashgacha, but if you people eat it because you don't want to eat it. But the expensive black caviar that comes from Caspian Sea, from that particular fish, generally the standard hashgachot, like Orthodox Union, OU, would not put their stamp on it. But I just want to mention that actually this was a big dispute, and there is a great authority, at least, Nodah BeYehuda, Rav Yechezkel Landau, that thought that black caviar would be kosher. And if you like this video, please press like.